Hey guys, this is Matt from Amateur Filmies and welcome to a brand new video. Our halfway to Black Friday order from Vinegar Syndrome came in a couple of weeks ago, so we thought we'd do a video showing you what we got, and we hope you enjoy. If you're watching this video, you probably already know who Vinegar Syndrome are, but basically they're a film restoration and distribution company based out of the US, and they specialize in exploitation cult genre films. While Vinegar Syndrome's titles are definitely not for everyone, I have to say that I really do respect the company and, the other boutique Blu-ray companies as well, because they've released so many films that I wouldn't have known about otherwise had they not actually gotten the rights and restored them. And the presentation of, all of these Blu-rays here is really great. So if you're into these type of, exploitation cult genre films, I do suggest looking into their catalog. Some of their movies are not the best, but you can't deny that they put a lot of effort into restoring and actually releasing them. So the first film I'll be showing today is this really cool film called Spookies. Spookies was one of the first Blu-rays that I added to my cart during the sale because I had heard a lot of really positive things about it. I'd also heard that it was an absolute batshit movie, and that's right up my alley. But a lot of people on different creators on YouTube have talked about why this film is such a bizarre ride, and I knew that I had to give it a go. So an interesting bit of backstory about this movie quickly is that, if I'm not mistaken, it was actually originally directed by two different people, and they got it independently financed, I think, and basically so they shot the whole movie, and when they showed the person who financed the film, they really didn't like it, so I think they got fired, and the guy brought on a new director to reshoot a lot of scenes and try and splice it in to make almost a different type of movie. And so the production on this is spotty at best, but what you get in the end is something that is just extremely hard to describe plot-wise. I watched this whole movie and it's really, really hard to actually explain what's going on. That said, even though the story is quite nonsensical, there is a lot to enjoy here. In particular, I absolutely loved the special effects in this movie, the prosthetics and the actual costuming and stuff of that that. There's a particular scene in this movie, from memory, it's like a type of spider-like creature that this woman turns into, and it is the stuff of nightmares. I couldn't believe how creepy it looked. I had to show everyone in Sarah's family how absolutely messed up this effect looked, but I absolutely loved it. Effects like that in a horror movie just make me love it, because it doesn't matter how bad the movie is, if it's got good effects, I'm going to enjoy it in some capacity, because it looked amazing. If you're like me and you enjoy watching horror movies for how they approach using prosthetics, makeup, costuming, and other types of special effects like that, there is a lot to enjoy here. But if you do like also having a coherent story in your horror films, I would avoid this one for sure. It's really hard to actually understand anything that's going on in this movie. You can string together some things, but at the end of the day, the ending isn't really satisfying if that's what you're looking for. A coherent story. The ending isn't really going to wrap up all the questions that you might have had going throughout the film. That said, it is an experience that I won't forget, and as I said, if you like those things in a horror movie, the effect-driven stuff, I would say give this one a go. This next film is called Raw Force. So this movie was a total blind buy for me, and I still am yet to watch it, but I want to give you the reason why I picked it up in the first place. It is one of those movies where, you read the plot, and that is enough to sell you on it. I'm going to read the back, and you tell me that this doesn't sound like an absolute fun ride. Welcome to Warriors Island, burial ground of disgraced martial arts masters. When the Burbank Kung Fu Club travels to this mysterious island, they quickly find themselves facing the bloodthirsty vengeance of flesh-ripping kung fu fighting zombies, gun-toting white slave traders, and a band of strange monks who may be the only key to explaining the madness. Recently, I've been on a big martial arts movie kick with the new Bruce Lee Criterion set that got released not long ago. I've been rewatching all those movies since I loved them during my childhood, and while I can't speak to how good the martial arts is in this movie, the fact that I have another crazy kung fu movie with all these, cannibal monks and, zombie-like creatures, I know it's going to be a fun time, so I can't wait to watch this one. The next film, which I'm really excited to show you guys, is the classic Dolomite. So I first heard about Dolomite when I was researching the blaxploitation genre a while ago, and it was always one that I really wanted to watch because I had heard such great things about it and how it was a really fantastic example of the genre. And obviously a lot of people have found out about the movie as well through the recent Eddie Murphy movie on, I think, Netflix. It's called Dolomite Is My Name. So I think a lot of people have gotten some new interest in checking out this movie. So I thought during the sale I would pick up Dolomite and be able to say that I've actually watched it. And I have to say I really, really enjoyed it. While the production was very obviously low budget, I thought the acting and especially the humor in this movie was top notch. I really liked Rudy Ray Moore's performance as the character Dolomite. I'm really interested to learn more about him as a person because I know that he was an actual real life comedian and came up with this character, I believe. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. And he's subsequently done a lot of other movies on top of this one. Like, I think the other ones are Petey Wheatstraw, Disco Godfather, and The Human Torpedo, I think. And, you know, I really, really liked his performance. You could tell he's extremely confident and he's hilarious at points in the movie. And just, yeah, I don't know, like, of the few films that I've watched from the blaxploitation genre, I can definitely see why this one is heralded as being one of the best examples, because it really was such a fun, enjoyable ride, and it really does make me want to check out those other movies that Rudy Ray Moore has actually starred in. If you're a fan at all of the blaxploitation genre, or you're curious about it and you haven't checked out Dolomite, I would definitely suggest giving it a go because there is a lot to enjoy and it is a really fun time. The next movie I'll be showing you is a slasher movie called Cutting Class. So I haven't had a chance to check out Cutting Class yet, but the main reason I wanted to get it is probably the same reason why a lot of people are initially drawn to it, and that's because it's actually one of Brad Pitt's first movies. I think the movie came out in like 1988 or 89, something like that, and so it's obviously really early on in his career, which makes me really curious about his performance. And, you know, just the idea of Brad Pitt being in a slasher-type movie is really intriguing to me. But it also stars Jill Sholin, I believe you pronounce her name. She was in Popcorn, which I quite liked, and I think she was even in The Stepfather, which was also a good movie. While this doesn't have the best reviews, I tend to not really give a crap about stuff like that when it comes to 80s slasher movies, because there are plenty of slasher movies from that era that have been reviewed really badly, but I still found things to enjoy in them. Like, one that comes to mind is Splatter University, for example. So while I'm not expecting the greatest things, I'm sure it'll be memorable in some capacity, if not just for the fact that it's Brad Pitt in a slasher movie. The next film I have to show you is the fantastic Night Beast. This movie came out in 1982, and if you are a fan of low-budget creature feature horror movies, you will absolutely love this one, I promise you. There is so much cool stuff in this movie, and one thing I really liked about it actually was the fact that it didn't mess around. It literally got straight into it right off the bat. Like, I think we see the Night Beast, you know, creature, like, I think not even 5-10 minutes into the movie's max, and I really, really like that. I think if you're doing a really low-budget horror movie like this, I think, you know, people are there because they want to see how you approach, you know, if in this case, they want to see the creature, they want to see, you know, really fun kills, and I really think they made a good decision in just showing the creature almost immediately. The special effects in this movie are really charming, and I really like the ray gun that the creature uses, because obviously it's like an alien type creature, and I like what the ray gun does to people who get hit by its bullets or rays or whatever. And obviously, in the instances of gore, like when the creature gets a hold of the people in the movie, it's not convincing in any way, but again, that adds to the charm of it. I really, really liked it. And not only are the special effects really charming, but the acting is as well, because of how laughably bad it is. It really adds to the fun of this movie, and I really do suggest watching this with a group of friends because it's just an awesome time. As I said at the start though, if you are a fan of low-budget creature feature horror films, I don't think you'll be disappointed with this one for sure. So this is the last standard release that I'm going to be showing before I start going into the ones that I got with the slipcovers, but I'm really excited to talk about this one as well. This is Tammy and the T-Rex. If I'm not mistaken, Tammy and the T-Rex is actually the first 4K release that Vinegar Syndrome have done, and this isn't the 4K release, obviously it's just the regular Blu-ray, which I'm totally happy with, but it's really cool to see movies like Tammy and the T-Rex getting a 4K release. I'm not sure that the filmmakers or, you know, people involved with the film would have ever thought that this film would actually get that type of treatment, but I'm so glad that that is the case. This movie has a lot of heart, and I couldn't help but smile throughout pretty much the entire thing. It stars Denise Richards and Paul Walker, and just the premise for this movie is one of the most craziest that I've ever heard. So the character played by Denise Richards has an ex-boyfriend that's absolutely crazy and ends up killing her love interest, who's played by Paul Walker. Not really a spoiler given that it's basically the premise of the entire movie, but an evil scientist and his henchmen end up getting the brain of Paul Walker's character and implanting it into a giant mechanical T-Rex, which, upon being reanimated, ends up taking revenge on all those involved in his death. One of the most absurd concepts for a movie ever, but I absolutely loved it. And, you know, with the mechanical dinosaur, I imagine that would have been really hard to, like, operate and shoot on camera, but I think they actually did quite a good job considering. There were a couple of sequences that where you could tell, like, you know, I don't know if they ran out of money or something, but were noticeably worse as far as quality. But ultimately, I think most of the scenes with the T-Rex were actually done quite well. While I did like the gore in this movie and the kills, I think one of the things that let it down a little bit was that there wasn't enough of that in the movie. By the end of it, the T-Rex actually hadn't really killed that many people, which sounds funny to say that out loud. But in the context of this movie, I think, you would want to go into watching this movie to see it cause a lot of destruction and mayhem. And I think it could have done a bit more on that front. Also, I wasn't particularly keen on where the story ended up going after about the halfway point. I think they should have emphasized the revenge factor just a little bit more in this movie, which naturally, again, would have led to more kills in the movie. But that being said, even though it's, it sort of lacks a little bit in the story, which, the story itself is already absurd anyway, so you can't really judge it too harshly on that. I do think it could have gotten a little bit better towards the end, but I think it is something that, if you're a fan of like crazy horror movies like this, which, is a common theme for a lot of the movies I'm showing here today, to be honest, but there's a really, really fun, almost family-friendly movie if you actually think about it. If you've seen it, you'll know what I mean, but I do recommend this one for sure. So the next 5 releases I was lucky enough to get with the slipcovers, and if you collect Vinegar Syndrome, you already know this, but the slipcovers on these releases are absolutely impeccable quality. Probably the best quality slips from any company, in my opinion, and I'm really lucky to have these in my collection. The first of those releases with a limited edition slipcover is this one here, the Vineyard. So this was another blind buy for me, and I haven't checked it out yet. The reason I picked it up, it's not really a strong reason, I just thought the premise of it sounded kind of cool. Basically, the main character played by James Hong, who I'll talk about in a moment, he plays I think a type of alchemist character, and basically he drinks these elixirs made from, I think, human blood that keep him young forever, and I think he's in need of more blood, so he ends up inviting all these actors to his like island mansion thing, and it goes from there. I always like silly plots like that, if that wasn't already clear from me showing you Tammy and the T-Rex and a bunch of others, but I thought that sounded cool, and I also really like James Hong as a character actor as well. I mean, the one role that jumps to mind immediately is, of course, his role as Lo Pan in John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China, but he's been in literally, I think, hundreds of things. I mean, his IMDb credits are extensive, so, and there was that aspect to it, but also he actually co-wrote and co-directed this movie, so I thought it'd be cool to give it a chance. He's the lead actor, but he also had a role in actually how the film was made as well, so it's released by Vinegar Syndrome, so I know I'm going to be getting some type of exploitation, genre film, so it should be really, really fun. Next up, we have the film Dolly Dearest. So again, I think this is one of the newer releases that Vinegar Syndrome has put out, and the main reason I wanted to get it is the fact that it is a killer doll movie. I'm not sure how much I've actually spoken about it on this channel, but the Child's Play movies, that horror franchise is one of my favorite franchises ever. I grew up loving those movies, and I couldn't tell you how many times I've actually watched them. So of course, when I saw that Vinegar Syndrome was putting out another killer doll movie, I was going to check it out for sure. That said, unfortunately, I was quite disappointed with this one. I did mention this as a type of criticism for Tammy and the T-Rex, but it's definitely a lot more prevalent in this one. There just aren't enough kills in this movie, unfortunately, and subsequently the movie actually ends up being really, really boring. The movie also ends extremely abruptly, which wasn't satisfying at all, but by that point I'd sort of checked out mentally anyway, because I just sort of had already known by that point that it wasn't going to get any better. While I do acknowledge that this film probably had a lower budget than the Child's Play movies, it unfortunately has the impact of not really making the doll that scary. There are times in the movie where the doll does look quite creepy, but it doesn't take you long to realize that the mechanics of the doll were really limited to only a few types of movements and expressions. So when you're actually seeing it, it's a little bit too predictable, and subsequently, again, it's just not that scary. The problem with this movie is that it really just is pretty forgettable, which is really unfortunate for a killer doll type of movie. You'd think that there'd be a lot of really cool, unique scenes in this movie that would, despite its low budget restrictions, would still make the movie enjoyable in some way, but unfortunately that is not the case. I can't really recommend this even if you are a fan of the Child's Play movies. I think you'll be disappointed by it. So yeah, I don't know I'll be revisiting this one anytime soon, unfortunately, but yeah, that's just my opinion, of course. Here we have the release of Beyond the Door 3. I am yet to watch this one, but if you have seen it, let me know what you think. You might notice, obviously, the fact that it's Beyond the Door 3. You might be curious about Beyond the Door 1 and 2. Beyond the Door 1 was actually recently released by Arrow Video in that box set that they did, which I also do have. But this is one of those movies where it just shares the same name. It doesn't actually have any relationship to the original movie or its sequel. So I thought that was kind of curious. And, I had heard on, I think it was the Shockwaves podcast, where they had the team from Vinegar Syndrome on, and I remember hearing them actually recommend this movie, which was another reason why I decided to check it out as well. Again, I'm very curious about it, that's why I picked it up, but if you have seen it, let me know what you think about it. Next up, we have the Candy Snatchers, with an absolutely beautiful slipcase. So I was actually really keen on checking this movie out because I'd read some pretty decent reviews on it, and of course, after learning about it through Vinegar Syndrome's announcement, I read about it, and it did seem like a type of film that I'd be interested in, so I gave it a go. I actually really liked this movie. It's a great grindhouse exploitation movie from the 70s. Has a lot of really good acting in it, and the premise, again, which is the reason why I pick up a lot of movies in the first place, the premise was actually quite interesting. I watched this one with Sarah, and I know that she really liked it as well. She actually shared a picture of it on our Instagram, and she made a comment which I do agree with, which is that this one would be a really good pairing with the original Last House on the Left, directed by Wes Craven. This is a really good example of 70s grindhouse and exploitation cinema, and again, it really is a good pairing with Wes Craven's Last House on the Left. It's got that really grainy feel, and of course there is the brutal content, so, they both do deal with the dark subject matter, but I really like the different twists and turns that the narrative takes, and overall, as I said, the acting is quite good as well. Not without its flaws, of course, but again, a really good example of that type of, film movement in the early 70s. I really do think if you enjoy those type of exploitation films, you will find something to enjoy in this one. So the last release of the slipcover before we get into the 2 box sets is XRay 3. So I think I mentioned in our last Blu-ray haul video that I was intending to get this one because I had recently picked up XRay 2 as well. And I did get around to watching this one, and I thought it was pretty good overall. It wasn't too bad. XRay 3 came out in 1995, and in a lot of ways it does feel like a 90s horror film, although I can't really articulate why it feels that way. Maybe it's just the way it's shot or the type of effects that have been used, but it does feel like that, and I do have a lot of nostalgia for 90s era horror films. And yeah, this film, it's not the strongest horror film. I definitely prefer the first one, which I think is, the best one out of all 3 of them. But, there is still stuff to like in this movie. The effects can sort of alter between being really cool and kind of bad. Again, I do like the first one a decent bit more. Not sure how often I will revisit the entire series, but I'm glad that I own this edition, and I have to say, the slipcover alone is just gorgeous. But yeah, I'm not disappointed by it, but again, I think I was hoping for something a little bit more memorable and maybe a little bit more extreme on the gore front as well. So the next 2 releases are box sets, and I'm really excited to have these in our collection because they're just of an amazing quality, and of course I'm interested in watching the films as well. The first box that I have here to show you is the Amityville Collection box set. Full disclosure, I haven't actually had the chance to watch any of the movies in either of the 2 box sets I'm about to show, but I am very excited to watch these ones. In particular, the Amityville set, which I'm talking about right now, of course, I'm really excited to watch these movies because I have the original trilogy box set from Scream Factory, and I've worked my way through the first 2. I'm still got to watch the 3rd one, and these ones naturally come after the 3rd one as well. I think this may be missing one Amityville movie, but I'm not even sure how much all of these movies actually are tied together by plot anyway, versus how much they just share the Amityville title. My understanding of these movies is they all have a type of object in the movie that is the main basis for the possession element in them. I could be wrong about that, but these movies haven't got the best reviews. I don't really care about that, as I've made it very clear with all these other movies. Just because a movie doesn't have a good rating doesn't mean there's not going to be something awesome about it. So very excited to watch these ones. After I watch the 3rd Amityville movie from the Scream Factory box set, I'll start digging into these ones, and I'm sure it'll be a really fun time. One thing I'll quickly say about these Vinegar Syndrome box sets as well, I already mentioned how good the quality of their releases are, but I really like this design where the top of it actually pops off. I'm sure I've already shown it in the B-roll footage, but I love how the top of it comes off and the actual movies are just stored inside like this. Absolutely fantastic, and it is the same case for this next box set I'm about to show, which of course is the excellent Forgotten Gialli Volume 1 set, which I am so stoked to have. So this box set comes with 3 movies. Inside you get Trauma, The Police Are Blundering in the Dark, and The Killer is One of 13. And just the concept of this box set is what makes me love companies like Vinegar Syndrome. My understanding is that obviously these are Forgotten Giallis in that they were almost, not available for anyone to actually watch. But somehow Vinegar Syndrome got their hands on the rights and they found, their copies wherever they were, and they were able to restore them and bundle them together in this box set. My understanding is that they do intend to release another GLE box set similar to this one, which I am also very stoked about. I've talked about it numerous times on this channel, how much I really love GLF films and why I think it's such a unique subgenre. And, you know, it's so much creative vision in those type of giallo movies. This great use of color, twists and turns in the story, just a bunch of crazy, awesome stuff, which obviously can change depending on the movie. But on the whole, the giallo genre is one of my favorites. And just the idea that I can now watch these 3 giallo films that, had Vinegar Syndrome not put this box out, I might not have ever been able to watch. So very excited to watch all 3 of them. And I have heard actually pretty good things about the movies bundled in here. So kudos to Vinegar Syndrome. I'm very happy that you put this box set out, and I really, really love the idea of you doing more of these in the future, because this is just such an awesome thing. So that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you as always for watching. Sarah and I really, really do appreciate it. I was very excited to make this video because I wanted to show you what a crazy catalog Vinegar Syndrome has, and, you know, give you guys some recommendations for some crazy, you know, cult movies that I thought were really, really fun. If you have any thoughts on these movies, and, you know, if you've seen them and you have, you know, some opinions about them, I'd love to hear them. And if you have any recommendations based on the movies that we've watched here, obviously I'd love to hear those as well. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.